continued Lenten season. And I love this graphic, by the way. It's truth and self-acceptance. It's the good, the rotten, or the bad, and, well, the ugly. And so while we are there in this experience of truth in the Lenten season, let's look back. We've got to remember that Paul brought us into this Lenten season with such a powerful message of how Lent came into being, what it means, what it meant, how it started, and how we experience it and demonstrate it in unity. And that is and so then we talked about being in the presence of now and taking that present moment and going within to that Christ center that Art so beautifully took us to in that meditation. That connecting with that Christ center then brings us into an opportunity of being able to move forward in that release process, in that renewal process, because it can be kind of scary sometimes. Then Art talked about moving into strength and to solidify our oneness, our awareness of the oneness with God. This has been a powerful Lenten season so far. And so today we are talking about truth. And know that Mark Anthony Lord, and if, again, this is from this little booklet, The Release and Renewal from Unity. And Mark Anthony Lord wrote the book on the 7, I'm so sorry. Mark Anthony Lord wrote a book on the 7 living words, and it was something that allowed us to move into these different aspects of the crucifixion story. And so this week is truth. This is truth. And this truth is brought forward in the part of forsaken, when Jesus felt like he had been forsaken by God. And he said during this crucifixion, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's interesting that in this story of Lent, in this story of the crucifixion process, this process of Jesus having to surrender himself, that this divine being that has been demonstrating for us, Jesus, has this moment of doubt, this moment of feeling and not supported, not loved, not even present with God. Why have you forsaken me? Crucifixion, I went to Catholic school, so I learned a lot about this actual process of creation and this part of the Easter story. And one of the things that came up is that through history, we've learned that those individuals who were crucified, they didn't die from just being cross and in the sun. They died from suffocation because the pull of the muscles didn't allow them to fully extinguish their breath. And they held on to this carbon dioxide in their lungs. And that is what caused them to finally leave their physical body. And I think about that and I imagine I would feel pretty abandoned too. Wow. So how does that relate to our Lenten experience, our experience of peace and renewal, and getting back to that divine presence and divine nature that we are in our awareness. It's part of that process, isn't it? The release, being in the process of letting go and identifying that intention of letting go. That intention, it comes up within us. And we begin working on it. We begin letting go of those thoughts and feelings that don't support the positive direction of our lives. And then it becomes something that's wonderful and freeing and empowering, even to let go of all of these things that no longer serve us. And then what happens? What happens when you clean your house? The dust rises. All the dust, all the dirt starts being brushed up into our awareness. And all of a sudden you start seeing the rotten, the ugly, those parts of you that maybe you don't want to see. Those parts of you that you really hoped would just fade into the background and heal on their own, right? Just, they'll take care of themselves. And so that is this third hour, the 3 o'clock hour that Jesus is experiencing here in our understanding and our awareness, is this time of realizing that as I let go and as I heal and as I deepen my spiritual experience, seeing parts of myself that aren't really in keeping with the beautiful image of myself that I was maybe hoping everyone would be aware of for me. So that takes us to truth. What is the truth of us? The truth of us as individuals, as beings in this experience. There are two truths. One is the absolute truth. The absolute truth is a description of all that is of a divine idea. All of those things that are brought forward from divine idea into our understanding and pressed into this divine nature that is us. It is changeless. It does not shift. It does not move. It is here and it is absolute. The other aspect of truth is the relative truth. The relative truth is that which describes all that is experienced in this physical space, in this humanness that we are, and it is always changing. You've heard that adage, the only constant in life is change. That's a relative truth. It is in this truth experience that we realize that we are divine and we are human. It's not but or, it is and. We are divine and human. And in our humanness, we have this beautiful cycle of healing. And it's it's about the physical body itself. This hemostasis is the first phase, and it's when all the blood rushes to a wound and it starts clotting to close the wound. There's this rush of blood. And then there's the inflammation process. This inflammation process is what presses and lifts the healing and repairing cells into the wound itself, into the injury. And as we sorry, as we experience this inflammation, it's an interruption in our experience of this wound. It can be painful, but it also protects the wound. Then there's the proliferative phase. Okay. And this is when the wound is rebuilt with new tissue, and that's collagen and extracellular matrix come together. And I'm getting pretty technical here for a reason. I hope you guys will appreciate it in the end. And then there's this final maturation phase, and this is the remodeling phase. And this is when the wound fully closes. It's using the repair, the cells that were used to heal and repair the wound, then they're pressed out and they are released because they're no longer needed. And that's the physical cycle of healing. And it's interesting that in our experience of being human and divine, that we have not only our physical healing that we have to deal with, that we have to experience, we have our emotional and spiritual healing. And it is interesting that we have similar cycles for both. And some of you probably are aware of Tara Brach. She is an American psychologist. She is a meditation leader. She's written several books, one of which is Radical Compassion. Excuse me. And that book is a powerful journey into self-acceptance and accepting and loving the world around you. So Tara Brach came up with this wonderful meditation that it's called the RAIN meditation. Some of you may be aware of it. And the R stands for recognize what's happening. And the A is allow life to just be. Allow life to just be. So in recognizing what's happening, it's like a wound being opened, and there is this sudden flow of blood and energy and awareness moving into that wound, moving into the emotional hurt, the spiritual pain that may be happening within you. Then you allow life to just be as it is. That is when we are in the inflammation phase, where it can be painful. We have to step into that painful process of allowing it to be what it is without judgment. For that's when we move into the true aspect of self-acceptance, in the truth, the absolute truth and the relative truth coming together as divine and human. Wow. As we then look at the letter I in RAIN, which she says is to investigate with gentle and curious attention. Investigate with gentle and curious attention. This means that we are allowing our body to communicate with our inner being, our divine nature. Just as Art so beautifully demonstrated in that meditation, we became investigators of our divine nature. And how our humanness is either allowing that divine nature to rise into visibility, or our humanness is pressing and separating us from that divine nature. And finally, we move into N, which is nurture with a loving presence. And it's interesting because in our model of physical healing to emotional or spiritual healing, we have this idea that in nurturing with loving presence, that we have to just allow things to be as they are. And we have another opportunity at this moment. The remodeling that occurs in our physical body occurs also in our spiritual and emotional experience. It occurs as we forgive, as we love, and as we release. For it is that forgiveness piece that is the remodeling of our spiritual presence and the allowance of our lives to be integrated with our divine nature. Some of you are likely aware of the Ho'oponopono, the song before Art's beautiful meditation that took us into our awareness of divine forgiveness. The Ho'oponopono was created by the natives in Hawaii. It's a native tradition, and it's a powerful process. It's going in and saying, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. And in doing this process for yourself, as that dust has risen, as you've released and let go throughout this Lenten season, as you process through your spiritual practices of prayer, meditation, this spiritual practice of just simply being present. These options of forgiveness and release help us to deepen that understanding and deepen the experience of our divine nature. We have these tools. We have these tools of forgiveness. We have these tools of love. We have these tools of prayer and great deep expression of our connection. That is the truth. The truth that humanity and divinity can coexist. One is absolute. The other is always changing and in relative nature. And they come together as a whole when you are deep in your self-acceptance and affirming your truth. Thank you. May you know blessings and great love.